So I was bored one day and decided to torture myself by beating ULTRAKILL's prelude with only the whiplash. The whiplash is ULTRAKILL's form of a grappling hook, dealing 0.2 damage and pulling you towards heavy enemies and pulling light enemies towards you. Now, before I show you the pain I endured, here are the ground rules. Firstly, no means of damage other than the whiplash. I've seen people on YouTube doing this and allowing themselves to use slamming and parrying. I, however, will only use the whiplash. Notice the asterisk here. That will be important later. Secondly, no glitching out of bounds. I don't have many tools to do with this, but I'm sure there's probably ways, which I will not use. Thirdly, I'm doing this any percent, not P% or 100%. That would probably be impossible. This means I can skip encounters that do not lock me in the room. Fourth, I can use weapons to get rid of obstacles in my way, namely glass panels and rock falls in 0-1 and 0-3. Finally, I am allowed to cheese bosses. Some of the encounters in this would be next to impossible without cheesing them, as you will see later on. Now that that's out of the way, let's begin. I started by trying to find a reliable way to deal damage to enemies, and I found I could jump in the air and whiplash them to me, dealing 0.2 damage. The hitbox would then keep me in the air, known as an enemy step, so I could grapple them again. Phil, having 0.5 health, took 3 grapples to kill, making them relatively manageable, but I did encounter my first problem: hard damage. Hard damage is a form of damage that stops you from healing past a certain point, and the whiplash is the main inflictor of hard damage, as an attempt to stop you from spamming it, which is exactly what I'm doing. Crowded corridors were another problem, as I couldn't get above the filth, and with the hard damage and the fact that I'm literally pulling them into me, I died. And tried again. It didn't take me long to realise they couldn't go through the door leading back to the first room, which stayed open upon re-entering. This meant I could pull them in one by one to deal with them. In the next room, I tried the same strategy again. I realised it must have been the specific first door, but I could still use the doors to separate them off and take them out in small groups. Environmental hazards such as pits also proved very useful. I then encountered the stray. With 1.5 health, it would take 8 whiplashes to kill them, which wouldn't have been that bad if it hadn't been for the other stray shooting at me. I ended up doing a sort of mid-air dance with the stray to dodge the other's projectiles. Fortunately, strays can't shoot when they're in the air, so I was only at risk from 1 stray, until the next wave spawned and I had to deal with 3 shooting at me. But I tanked a few hits and managed to kill all the strays and the filth. The next rooms were pretty smooth, but then I encountered my first roadblock, Maurice. With a huge health pool and attacks that are constantly barraging you with projectiles, I couldn't get close without dying. I sat there, thinking, could this be the end? Nah. Turns out the beam attack has a pretty long wind-up that allowed me to deal 5 whiplashes, or 1 total damage, to the Maurice. And another interesting bit of trivia I learned is that the Maurice's frequency of its beam attack increases the lower its health gets. So after it got to about 25% HP, I could just sit on it and whiplash it until it died. 5 minutes later, Maurice fell, and I had completed the first level in the challenge. 0-2 actually proved pretty easy. I skipped through most of the rooms. I initially thought that the final room would prove to be a challenge, but it was relatively fine, and I beat the level in 2 minutes. Then came 0-3. I had been dreading this level. I skipped through and encountered the Schism, an enemy with 5 HP, taking 25 whiplashes to kill. However, being immobile and really quite stupid, they were actually easier than strays to take out. Then it was time to meet Swords Machine. This fight was really hard, and after 10 fruitless minutes of attempts and research, I decided I needed to change strategy. I realised that the fallen stones that blocked the entrance could be stood on, and after a few minutes of trying, I found the perfect spot to stand and whiplash the Swords Machine to death. Picking up the shotgun to destroy the obstacle in my path, I moved on, skipping through the rest of the level with ease, until I encountered Swords Machine. Again! This time it was even harder. No cheese spots, faster attacks. After 8 minutes of trying and failing, I knew I had to make an exception. I gave myself the feedbacker, allowing myself to parry the Swords Machine to get it into its down state, and then whiplash it. The parry also did a lot of damage, which I would have preferred if it didn't, as it would legitimise the challenge slightly more. So I put an asterisk in the whiplash only part. Now people can't get angry at me telling me I didn't follow my own rules. It was a success, and I moved on to 0-4, unequipping the feedbacker. 0-4 was another really easy level, with only the first room posing a major challenge. I found a spot quite high up where I could pull strays to pick them off, after which I killed the Filth and Maurice. I skipped the next few encounters, and in the last room I pulled off a speedrunning trick by slam-storing to do a super jump and then dashing over the hitbox to start the encounter, meaning I could exit the room without fighting anyone and move on to 0-5. Finally came 0-5. I expected it to be as hard as 0-3, but I quickly found a cheese spot, by accident, in which the Cerberus couldn't get me. When the second one spawned, I simply moved and got myself back into the cheese spot, so they were both positioned within reach, and neither could get to me, having to whiplash each 400 times to kill them. After an agonising 6 minutes of spamming the R key on my keyboard, I watched the gates of hell open and walked into the elevator. I had done it. I had done ULTRAKILL's prelude. Whiplash only. Almost. Thanks for watching. This video was really fun to make, and I would really appreciate if you could like or even subscribe to support the channel. If this video is received well, I will contemplate making my content more like this rather than video essays. Bye!